Dear students of class 12 in Rajshahi College, hope you are doing well and you are taking your preparation for the upcoming HSC examination, which will be held in a convenient time in the next year. In the previous classes on English compulsory second paper course, I discussed different fundamental aspects of grammar such as verb patterns, formation of sentences, etc. Today I will start discussing classification of sentences. Classification of sentences is needed to learn by the students because there will be an item in your second paper question to transform different types of sentences. To transform those sentences correctly, you need to know the structure of the sentences, and the structures of the sentences can be learned only by learning different classes or different types of sentences. Well, we classify English sentences on the basis of their patterns, structures, on the basis of their degrees of adjectives, on the basis of the nature of the finite verbs in the sentence. First, I discuss the classification of sentence patterns. According to the patterns, the simple sentences can be classified into 5 specific groups or 5 specific types, such as assertive sentences, number 2, interrogative sentences, number 3, imperative sentences, number 4, optative sentences, and number 5, there are the exclamatory sentences. Exclamatory sentences. I am deleting the other headings of sentences, and though I think you know the structure of the sentences, today I will make a revision of what you have learned so far since your school days. I will simply provide you the structures of the sentences, and though you know, you can identify the sentences, but I have seen from in my experience that sometimes you do some gross mistakes. Most of the students do mistakes while making sentences. For example, I have many a times seen students writing sentences like I was write a letter, etc. Remember that English sentences are based on the combination of the uh, subject and the verb, finite verb in particular, and there should be a coherence between the subject and the verb and the finite verb of the clause or the sentence. Assertive sentences are made of, as I told you, well, usually we will get some items or elements common in all the subjects, and among the most common ones there is the subject and the finite verb. The subject in an assertive sentence is followed by a finite verb, and that finite verb is followed by adverb or complement or object. Plus, we also have participle or infinitive phrases. Well, always remember that participle and infinitive phrases can be used before the subject of the clause or sentence. I repeat, participle and infinitive phrases can be used before the subject of this clause or the sentence, or in other words, we can say that subject follows, sometimes in some sentences, subject follows the infinitive or the participle phrases. I am writing a few sentences to show you the structure in practical. The man came here to see us. Here the man is the subject, came is the finite verb, here is the adverb, and to see us is the infinitive phrase. Again, look at this sentence. Taking tea, the boy, well, the guest started his job. In this sentence, you see, the sentence starts with a participle phrase, present participle phrase, present participle. The guest is the subject, started is the finite verb, and his job is the object of the sentence. I became a teacher. This is a sentence. This is a sentence starting with the subject become in the past indefinite form as the finite verb. A teacher is the complement. In a previous class, I discussed the definition and the use of objects, complements, and adverbs. Complement. Okay? So, in all assertive sentences, subject and finite verbs are present. The use of subject and finite verbs is mandatory in the assertive sentences. Apart from those, in different sentences, you may get the items or the elements like adverb, complement, object, participle, infinitive phrases, etc. Even there can be some assertive sentences without any additional extension, such as I sleep. Here we have only the subject and the finite verb. Thus, in each and every assertive sentence, the presence of subject and finite verb is mandatory. And now, let us discuss the structure of the interrogative sentences. Interrogative sentences starts in three ways. Number one, in three different structures. We present interrogative sentences, or we get interrogative sentences in three structures. For example, some interrogative sentences begin with auxiliary verb, that is followed by, the auxiliary verb is followed by the subject, then comes the finite verb, and afterwards the extensions. Well, adverb, complement, object, participle or infinitive phrases, all these are all together, we may call them the extensions. So, interrogative sentences begin firstly with auxiliary verb, which is followed by the subject and the finite verb in the correct form of verb tense, in the right form of tense. Extension. Sorry. Now we will discuss the other patterns of interrogative sentences, such as one begins with another type of interrogative sentence begins with the be verb followed by the subject, and then there comes the complement. Be verb, then subject, then comes the complement. And sometimes the sentences, interrogative sentences begin with WH, either of the WH expressions plus auxiliary verb, plus subject plus main verb or finite verb, and then in each cases we may have or may not have extensions like object, complement, adverb and the participle phrases. Let us see the examples of such sentences. If we get a sentence or write a sentence like this one, did you meet him? In this sentence, did is the auxiliary verb, you is the subject, meet is the finite verb, and him is an extension which is an object. You may add another extension, adverb. Did you meet him then? Was he playing there? Was is the auxiliary verb, he is the subject, playing is the finite verb, there is the adverb. You see, we have auxiliary verb at the beginning, we have the subject following the auxiliary verb, the finite verb is used next to the subject, and we have an extension adverb at the end of the sentence. This is interrogative sentence pattern 1. In the interrogative sentence pattern 2, we have a be verb, then we have the subject, then the complement, and particularly we have the extension complement. Sometimes we have or we may not have adverbs. In this structure, we will get no object at all. For example, was he poor? In this sentence, we have the be verb, the subject he, followed by the complement poor. Again, are they working are they feeling are they happy? Now, are is the be verb. Are is not here an auxiliary verb. Sometimes I have heard students say identifying this was or are as the auxiliary verbs. These verbs or any be verb can be used as auxiliary verb or can be identified as auxiliary verbs, but where there is an auxiliary verb, there must be the presence of a finite verb. Without the presence of a finite verb, we cannot think of the existence of an auxiliary verb. In fact, the auxiliary verbs are used only to determine the tense form of the finite verb. Therefore, the sentences like these ones, was he poor or are they happy now, we do not have any finite verb, and thus was or are in the sentences are used as the be verbs. In the sentence, are they happy now? Are is the be verb used to make the interrogative sentence. They is the subject of the sentence. Happy is the complement of the sentence, and now you know is the adverb. Finally, in cleaner নাই একটু help করো। Thank you. Well, in the third pattern of the interrogative sentences, we have a WH at the beginning, then comes the auxiliary verb followed by the subject, and the subject is followed by finite verb and extensions. For example, when did he come? When did he come? When we have the WH, did is the auxiliary, he is the subject, come is the finite verb. Well, in the previous discussion, I identified was or are as the be verbs, but they can also be used, or they are often used as auxiliary verbs in the sentences. For example, look at this sentence. What are they doing now? In this sentence, we have the WH, what, are is the auxiliary, they is the are is the auxiliary verb, they is the subject, doing finite verb, now is the adverb. Have you understood the lesson? Have is the sorry. How have you understood the lesson? Here, how is considered a WH when it is used in a sentence. Have is the auxiliary verb. You is the subject in the sentence. Understood is the finite verb. and the lesson is the object of the sentence. Object of the sentence. So we have three types of interrogative sentences, one beginning with the auxiliary verb, another one beginning with the be verb, and finally the third type of interrogative sentences are there which begin with a WH such as who, what, when, why, where, etc. and how is also included in the category of the WH expressions. Now I will discuss, I have discussed already the structure of the assertive sentences and interrogative sentences. Now I will discuss the structure of the imperative sentences. In interrogative sentences, we do not go the subject explicitly. In imperative sentences, we do not get the subject explicitly. The subject is implicit in the in the imperative sentence, and an imperative sentence begins with the base verb, and that is followed by any extension except complement. Any of the extensions. In an imperative sentence, since the subject is implicit, there is no way to use a complement in the imperative sentences. For example, do the work now. Here we have do as the base verb, the work is the object, now is the adverb. Live here, we have the be verb live, here is an adverb used in the sentence. Well, you see, I told in a previous class that the objects can be made the subject of the passive form of the sentence. Thus, I have identified the work as the object of the sentence. Do the work now. If you are asked to make the sentence pattern, you need to use let. A let at the beginning of the sentence, then there comes the subject, let the work be done now. Let the work be done now. So, here even in the passive form of the imperative sentence, the subject is not explicit. Sometimes we are, in particular in our school days, we are advised to use by you, a phrase by you, as the object of the sentence, but I think this is unnecessary. The use of by you is unnecessary. You did it. If it is an since it is an assertive sentence, you did it. If you are asked to make this sentence passive, you need to use by you at the end of the sentence. It was done by you. But you need not use this by you in the passive form of an imperative sentence. For example, we are asked in our school days, we are advised in our school days to use the phrase by you after the finite verb in the passive form of an imperative sentence. But modern sentence structures show that the use of by you in the passive form of an imperative sentence is unnecessary. And if anyone asks you to make this sentence passive, leave here, you cannot make the sentence passive because there is no object in this sentence. I repeat, only the active verbs with an object can be made passive, in which the object becomes the subject of the passive form. And now let us go for discussing the structures of the optative sentences. The optative sentences begin with sometimes may, sometimes with had or could, and sometimes with sometimes with had and sometimes with could. Sometimes also the clause I wish is used as the sentence of the I wish is used, the clause I wish is used at the beginning of the optative sentences. If you are asked to begin a question and begin an optative sentence with may, look at the sentence, may Allah bless us all. Well, we have two objects here. Us is an object which is modified by another noun or object, all. After may, we have the word Allah as the subject, and bless is the finite verb. One important thing is to note here is that we will not use any additional s or es after the finite verb in an optative sentence, even if the subject is a third person singular one. Uh, well, uh, in the usual usage, we have s after the we use an additional s with the finite verb when the verb is presented in the present indefinite form with a subject in the third person. For example, Allah knows all, or Allah knows everything. This, the finite verb know, takes an additional s because it is used in the present indefinite tense with a third person singular number as its subject, and it is used in an assertive sentence. But in an optative sentence, we do not need to use the additional s with the finite verb. When we use had after had, we use the subject plus a complement or rather objects. For example, had I subject plus finite verb. Had I done it? Had I done it, or had I the wings of a bird? Full stop. Similarly, after could in an optative sentence, we use the subject, then finite verb, then sometimes there may come either of the extensions. For example, could I sleep well? Well, in the previous sentence, had I the wings of a bird, or had I done it, or could I sleep well? If you do not, if you put an, if you use a full stop at the end of the sentence, it is an imperative sentence. But if you use a note of interrogation at the end of the sentence, it will become the interrogative sentence. For example, had I the wings of a bird ending with a note of interrogation, this is an interrogative sentence. But the same sentence, the wings of a bird when ends with a full stop, it is an optative sentence. And finally, I wish plus an assertive sentence. It makes an optative sentence. I wish I could meet him. the assertive in the past verb. I wish he knew this. I wish he knew this. So, optative sentences can have four different structures. Firstly, subject, finite verb, and object. Then add, subject, and finite verb. We may also get optative sentence beginning with a could followed by the subject and finite verb with extensions. Finally, we have some optative sentences beginning with the clause I wish with an assertive sentence, and of course they make a complex sentence because of the existence of two clauses in such sentences. For example, I wish makes a clause, he knew this makes another clause. The combination of the two clauses has made the sentence a complex one. Similarly, I wish I could meet him. In this sentence, we have I wish, the main clause, a relative conjunction, a relative pronoun, not conjunction, a relative pronoun is omitted, and with I wish we have another clause in this sentence, I could meet him. Finally, now I will discuss the structure of the exclamatory sentences. Exclamatory sentences starts with number one with a WH such as how or what, how is followed by an adjective, and then comes the subject, and then comes the finite verb. Similarly, what is followed by a noun or noun phrase, plus subject plus finite verb. And another type of exclamatory sentence begins with an expression of deep emotion such as alas or oh or hurrah. Plus note of exclamation or exclamatory expression plus assertive sentence. For example, alas, he lives a miserable life. Look, Alas, he lives a miserable life. We have used S. In the exclamatory sentence for the use of the verb in the present indefinite form with a subject in the third person singular number. After may, after had, we do not use an additional a, I repeat, but after the expressions like alas, oh, or hurrah, we need to, where necessary, we must use the structure of the assertive sentence. Hurrah! You have got the prize. Well, I did not write any example of the use of how or what. How big the snake is. So we have the adjective how big is the we have how, the WH, big is the adjective complement, the snake is the subject. How big the snake, not it, how big the snake is. Note of exclamation, plus note of exclamation plus note of exclamation. Or if we use the expression of what a big snake it is. Look, what is followed by a noun phrase? A noun phrase, NP, then it is the subject and is the finite verb followed by a note of exclamation. Thus, dear students, today I have discussed 5 patterns of simple sentences in the on the basis of the patterns of sentences. In the next class, I will discuss the sentences based on the structure, based on their structure, or in the next class, I will discuss different sentences based on their structures. Thank you for today. Wishing you good luck. Stay home, stay well. Thank you.